This is Duke University.
Hello, everybody. I am Brian Murray. I'm the Interim Director of the Duke University Energy Initiative, and it's really my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Mauricio Gutierrez, who's the President and CEO of NRG Energy. Mauricio joined NRG in 2004 and helped build it from a regional wholesale generating business to a national Fortune 200 diversified energy company. NRG is the nation's largest competitive power generator. It's also a major competitive energy retailer that serves nearly 3 million retail customers and is one of the country's largest owners and operators of renewable power facilities. Prior to becoming the president and CEO, which I believe is about a year ago, Mauricio held the position of Chief Operating Officer of NRG. He began his career as a senior consultant and project manager at Mexico City-based DTP Consultores, working on various energy and infrastructure projects in Mexico. He's got several degrees. I think I'll mention one of them because there are several people here from Colorado School of Mines, and so he has a degree in mineral economics from the Colorado School of Mines, and I know that some of the students have already tracked him down in the hallway, and we've got pictures that we're going to send back to Colorado School of Mines. So Mauricio, it is really great to have you here at Duke, and thank you so much for coming here for this big event that we're having here this week. So, as I mentioned, you joined NRG in 2004, and the company has really taken a tremendous transition from well, let's not call it a small regional operator, but a regional wholesale generator to a sort of fully integrated wholesale retail operation with a lot of emphasis on it's got a much more diverse customer base than it used to have. And so, if you wouldn't mind, could you just tell us a little bit about how NRG made that transition, what sort of decisions were involved in it? And we'll have plenty of time to talk about any regrets or things that you'd like to see done differently, but for now.
Well, first of all, Brian, thank you for the invitation, and it's great to be here with all of you in this week. And as I was traveling here, I was going back to my years in grad school, and I tend to think that it hasn't been that long since I was on your side, but my 3 kids will think differently. But look, I mean, I started in NRG in 2004, and for those of you who don't know the entire history of NRG, NRG was actually a spin-off of one of the utilities. When deregulation happened, Xcel Energy of Minneapolis, they split their generation business with the rest of the regulated utility. And NRG was one of the first companies that actually was impacted by the energy crisis and the fallout of Enron and filed for bankruptcy. But since it was the first one to file for bankruptcy, it was also the first one to come out, which it will be useful as I tell you the story. It came out of bankruptcy in December of 2003, and I joined in 2004. So I've been very fortunate to see the transformation of NRG almost in its entirety from different vantage points. I started my career in the power industry, trading commodities, trading natural gas and power, and then moving to operations, and then finally into the management route, and now leading the company. So I was able to see it in very different ways. And I will say that NRG's transformation, I will put them in 3 big buckets that I think are the reflection of the industry as a whole and how the industry has evolved, particularly the competitive power industry. So when NRG came out of bankruptcy, if you recall, natural gas prices were close to $3. And since we were the first ones to come out of bankruptcy, we were the beneficiary of the entire bull market that happened between 2004 and 2008, that culminated with the financial crisis, and perhaps more importantly, the shale gas revolution. So from 2004 to 2008, NRG was incredibly profitable and very successful because as a power generator, we were selling. When you look at our portfolio is primarily in nuclear, coal, and oil back then. So we were selling electricity at gas prices. So we were making the difference between these solid fuels and natural gas prices. So as gas prices were going up, our margins were going up. So during that period, it was the first transformation. We were a regional independent power producer, primarily in the Northeast. So when this happened, we were actually we had a lot of firepower. And, we had an opportunity to, I guess, buy our partner in the West Coast, which at the time was Dynegy. And, prior to NRG, I was actually at Dynegy. So I had a good inside scoop on their portfolio. We had a joint venture between NRG and Dynegy called West Coast Power. So that was the first expansion of NRG. So we had our California position. We were regional in the Northeast, and in 2006, we had an opportunity to expand into Texas. So the second largest generator in Texas, became available, and that was Texas Genco. Close to 10,000 megawatts of generation, across the different spectrum of fuels, and that really completely transformed the company back then. I mean, we went from, I think we doubled the size with the acquisition of Texas Genco, and we rode that bullish wave until 2008, and I think that's when it marks like the second transition or the transformation of NRG, because as gas prices were going down, I mean, if you remember, we hit a high price of $14 per MMBTU in the summer of 2008, and then it dropped significantly, compounded by the financial crisis. But the underlying fundamental was shale gas and how cheap we were starting to get natural gas off the ground. And so at that point, we were actually looking for businesses that were not necessarily correlated to natural gas, that were actually negatively correlated to natural gas. And we looked at retail, retail electricity. And in 2009, we acquired Reliant Energy. It became available because this massive disruption in natural gas prices just created an opportunity for us to move on that space. And that's when we realized, at first the Reliant acquisition was a risk management instrument, but very quickly we realized that the industry actually was moving towards the retail space, that there was a whole lot more to have a conversation with the customer directly, as opposed to just being a wholesale generator. So when we moved into retail, we very quickly realized that the industry was actually going to be forced to move to an integrated platform. So the two competitive sides of the business was generation and retail, and this was the opportunity to bring those two together and realize not only cost synergies, but realize the opportunities of combining the two. And once again, we were the first ones to move on that space. I would say a little bit more as a necessity, not having the foresight of the integrated model, which now we know that most of the other IPPs have moved to this integrated model. And then we acquire other retailers. We really like the business. We acquired Green Mountain Energy, and we acquired a number of businesses, retail businesses, to grow our franchise. And I think today we're the largest competitive retailer in the country with over 3 million customers. So that was the second part of the transformation. It was to go from a traditional IPP to an integrated energy company with business in both generation and retail. And at the same time, we were looking at renewables. We started with wind, and we were a little bit late to the party. We realized that once we got into wind, and we very quickly shifted gears, and we went into the solar business. And today we're the largest solar generator in the country. I think we were the first mover. We also took advantage of a generational opportunity with the very, very large solar projects that we were able to develop. And the third one, which is really what allowed us to have the scale that we have today, it was during the period of 2012 to 2015 or 16. I mean, back then, I traded natural gas, and believe me, I knew a lot of the people on the other side of the natural gas industry, and none of us would have, foreseen the impact that, horizontal drilling and the shale gas was going to have in the industry. We never thought that it was going to go from $14 to what it is to, in 2011, I think we hit $2 per MMBTU or sub $2 per MMBTU. So when you have those type of economics, you immediately look at how can you, remain competitive. And for us, it was economies of scale. So we had to take cost out of the system. And we started to consolidate the IPP sector. So we acquired in 2013, we acquired GenOn, which in itself was already a consolidation of two large IPPs. And Reliant and Mirant became GenOn. And then in 2014, we acquired Edison Mission. So, we wake up in 2015 and we have like 50,000 megawatts of generation for all the good reasons. But, we ended up with a portfolio that was just so massive. 50,000 megawatts of generation, just to give you an order of magnitude. We can produce enough electricity if we run at capacity to basically supply 25% of the households in the US. So it is it's an incredibly large portfolio, very diverse. So that's how we ended up where we are today, which, if I describe our business, we have two main businesses, generation and retail. Within generation is the traditional conventional type of power plants, the coal, the nuclear, the gas. And then you have the renewable business, which is what we're transitioning to or evolving to. And then on the retail side, we have the residential customer and then the commercial and industrial customer, which is a completely different type of customer. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but that's how we ended up where we are today.
Clearly, as we've heard throughout the day, and everybody here is sort of their energy wonks, is shale gas and shale oil are really the story of the last 10 years. But you have a more diversified business right now, and part of the diversification, I think, is to diversify away from that type of risk. But in so doing, though, you've had to, sort of combine types of businesses that are maybe to some extent sort of untraveled territory in the electric utility sector, and going from specialization in generation to retail operations and very retail-oriented operations. And so as you look ahead, do you feel like the company is sort of better protected against shocks in particular commodity markets? Or do you feel like there's still something lurking out there that is a source of potential shock?
No, look, we have spent the last 5 or 6 years trying to diversify away from the direct correlation to commodity prices, whether it's natural gas or power. And I think we've been very successful. If you look at the company today, close to 2/3 of our gross margin comes from something other types of revenues than commodity-linked revenues. 2/3 come from either our retail business, our renewables business, which is under long-term contracts, our capacity revenues, which are not necessarily linked to energy, although they are indirectly. So what we used to be once, all linked to commodity prices, now only 1/3 of our gross margin is only linked to commodity prices. And, that actually has allowed us to weather the massive transition that we're seeing in our markets. This industry started, 110 years ago. And not until the last 10 years, we've seen this massive turnover of, from coal and oil to natural gas and renewables. And, never in our industry, we actually have seen the amount of retirements that we're seeing today. Because for the first 100 years, we're chasing demand. We were trying to, electrify the country. And until now, we're having this massive turnover of resources. And it's very difficult to time and to I guess, to time the market. You don't know how long this transition is going to last. So, we actually have embraced what I describe as, two main characteristics, is integration and diversification. Integration in terms of, the generation and retail, because they tend to be, negatively correlated. And diversification, not only diversification in terms of our resources, but diversification in terms of businesses. So, when you ask me, so how are we set up for the future, I would say that, we're focused on three main areas. Number one is the renewables, and renewables in general. When I took over as CEO, we were going down the path of breaking out the green businesses that we had from the traditional or the conventional businesses. And with a little bit of foresight in terms of where the markets were going, I was concerned with that breakout, because what that meant is we had two duplicative cost structures to be able to support those businesses. And in a time when you have low commodity prices, what you want is to be incredibly cost efficient. You don't want to be cost inefficient. So from my perspective, while I understand why we were trying to do it, and it was really to focus on the investor and to appeal to the green investor, we were actually putting ourselves in a disadvantage from a cost competitive standpoint. So I reintegrated that back. I mean, it was already, we were already going down the path of breaking it out, and I reintegrated what we describe as the GreenCo, or the GreenCo businesses. And when I reintegrated it, I fully reintegrated it. We had to leverage the existing platform that we had on the conventional business to really continue growing our renewable business. So the beginning, the first part of the year was all about reintegrating the renewable business. And just a few months ago, and this is already public information, but I will be talking about that because our earnings call is actually in 2 days. So I will be announcing the transaction in much more detail. But we were the stalking horse for what I believe is the largest renewable portfolio that became available, the Son Edison portfolio, close to 2,000 megawatts of wind and solar projects, and we were able to acquire that. So I think that should be a reflection of how I think about the future for the company. Is we're committed and we're focused on growing our renewable business, number one. The second piece is retail. I think we want to provide more energy choices to consumers. I think consumers, it's been a little too long just to have the utility just give us one option in the menu. I think it's time to provide consumers a lot more options. And in the residential side, well, let me just say that there is not a silver bullet when it comes to interacting with consumers. The residential customer, some of them may want to have backup generation and rooftop solar, and they want to have, and if they're going to buy system power, they want to have 100% renewables. That's one type of customer. Other type of customer wants zero customer service, and they want to buy the cheapest electricity that is available. We as a company want to make sure that we provide all the different options for the customer, and that we make it very easy for the customer to interact with their energy. I mean, we've never interacted with electricity before. Fortunately, solar energy allows us to make electricity a little bit more palpable. So we want to make sure that we have that interaction with the customer. And the commercial and industrial side is actually even more interesting, and I think is the one that is gonna be disrupted perhaps more quickly than the residential side. Again, I don't subscribe to the idea that there is this silver bullet where whether it's renewables or batteries, and that's it, and that's what every customer wants. I think every customer, is going to want different things, and we want to make sure that we are in this era of customization for the customer on the C&I space. So let me just give you an example. I mean, a hospital may want to have combined heat and power to lower their cost, to use steam in their processes. But I will tell you that the hospitals want to make sure that they are 100% reliable. The hospitals want to have triple redundancy. They can never run out of power. And that's one set of solutions for them. There may be another customer that is a customer-facing business that actually have a sustainability goals that allow them to interact with their own customers. And perhaps they want to have solar panels and electric vehicle charging stations in front of their building. And so that's a different solution for them. And perhaps batteries are a better solution for them. Data centers, we're going to have to rethink how we provide power to data centers, particularly as we're moving all applications into the cloud. So that second piece of the business is just becoming incredibly interesting for me, is the retail part of the business. And look, I mean, I came through the generation side, through the trading side. So this is the part that is a little bit more unknown for us, although I looked at it for the past 4 or 5 years, and I think there is an incredible opportunity. And then the last piece is innovation. Innovation in the sense of what is the next generation of for a lack of a better word, generation. We own, around the country, we have about 170 sites, all with substations, transmission lines, completely connected to the grid. Perhaps those generators are not going to be the ones that we're going to use in 10 or 15 years. That doesn't mean that the site is not incredibly valuable and is connected exactly where it needs to be connected on the grid. So I think about battery storage, and can we bring battery storage to some of those sites and just disconnect the old one, connect the new one? And I'm oversimplifying, but not that much, because we need to take advantage of those sites. So battery storage is very important for us. Fuel cell energy, we have a partnership with them. On the demand side, demand side management, controllable demand is something that we acquired a company a few years ago. We have completely integrated that into our business solutions. So we don't know which technology will be the winner. That's why we need to make sure that we have our hands on all of them, and that we just learn to listen to our customers a little more.
You said NRG has set a very aggressive goal in terms of carbon reductions, 50% by 2030 and 90% by 2050. That's an ambitious goal. And so what do you see as the challenges, or do you see challenges associated with hitting those goals? And do you have any concerns about achieving those goals and still having accessible, reliable, and affordable energy for your customers, which is an absolute mandate from the market?
I guess just as a way of context, about a year and a half ago, a little more than that, 2 years ago, as the COO, they've asked me to look at the carbon goals that we were about to announce. And the carbon goals that we had was to reduce our carbon footprint 50% by 2030 and 90% by 2050. And just to put it in context, we produce about 100 million tons of CO2. I mean, that's the size of, a little more than the size of what Turkey produces. So it's a pretty, daunting challenge. But when we looked at it, what I was asked to is, Mauricio, before we actually go with those goals, do we have a path to achieve them? Because they cannot just be idealistic goals. We need to make sure that they are actually achievable. And what I can tell you today, with the benefit of a year and a half, is we're actually on the path to achieve them. And we're doing it in a couple of different ways. Number one is continue to grow our renewable business. Number two is to reposition our portfolio to what the grid needs from us today. So if you think about a coal plant 5 or 6 years ago, there's a reason why they were called baseload plants. It's because they were running all the time. They were the cheapest, and they were running all the time. Well, today, those coal plants, because natural gas is so cheap, they're not running all the time. They're actually only running when we have spikes in demand. So I call it, our insurance product. Perhaps they were running 60, 70% before. Now they're running 10, 15%. So there's going to be a significant decrease in carbon production just by virtue of how the grid is changing. And there will be a time that these coal plants are not going to be needed anymore, when we actually can demonstrate that we can run the system completely reliably the way we have run it in the past, with high amounts of intermittent generation, which is wind and solar. But the time is not yet here. So one is just changing and the way we were operating our power plants. The second thing is, we're converting actually a lot of our coal plants to natural gas. And just by doing that, we cut 50% of the CO2 emissions of the plant. Just this year, we converted close to 2,000 megawatts of generation from coal to gas. Early next year, we're going to be opening the largest project in the world for carbon capture and sequestration in Texas, in one of our coal plants. We expect that this is going to be one of many, and we need to figure out how to sequester carbon. And it's not just for coal, it's also for natural gas. Mm-hmm. So natural gas will be the coal of tomorrow, and we need to figure out a way to capture the carbon from these plants. So, there is a line of sight on how to get there. But I will tell you, and this is probably one of the biggest concerns that I have, as we're going right now through this transformation or this transition in our industry, it's very easy to question the competitive model and to question the structures that we have in place. We've been so successful on the renewable side that it's starting to have a significant impact on competitive markets. When renewables are 5% of your total generation, there is an impact, but there's not a tectonic change. But when it's 30 or 40%, and you're running renewables at zero variable cost, and when you actually have incentives of subsidies that incentivize running these plants even at negative prices, then you completely disrupt competitive markets. And for those of you who are studying competitive markets, our markets were never designed to have 30 or 40% of renewable generation that is actually incentivized to run at negative prices. And I'm gonna do an oversimplification of our markets. You have a cost curve, which becomes your supply. You have demand. You come up with the marginal price of electricity, and then it gets really complicated. You account for congestion, transmission constraints, the LMP models. But that model never contemplated, having 30 or 40% of resources bidding at zero variable cost, and in some cases at minus $23 per megawatt hour, which is the production tax credit that some of the wind resources get today. So that's the biggest challenge that I think we have today. We've been so successful in renewables. Now we need to make sure that we integrate it, and that we don't put the existing resources that still make 80% of our total generation potentially at risk of retiring or at risk of leaving the market because we're not sending the right price signals. And what happens is, you're starting to see different stakeholders, in this case, states, taking action and trying to save generation that perhaps don't need to be saved, right? I mean, you look at New York, Ohio, Illinois. Ohio is trying to save their coal plants. New York's trying to save their nuclear plants, and unfortunately, those subsidies, which will hit ultimately ratepayers, consumers, there's got to be a better way, and I think the better way is competitive markets, competitive forces. So if I think it will be important that we put a price on carbon, a meaningful price on carbon that allows companies to allows the market to send the right price signals, so companies like us and others can come up with the best solution. So concerns me because if we see subsidies, then that slows down renewable penetration, and perhaps puts the reliability of the system at risk if we're seeing massive retirements of generation that shouldn't retire this quickly. So that's one of the big concerns.
You think if a robust price on carbon that might sort of emanate from the Supreme Court allowing the Clean Power Plan to be in place and then extending that for deeper cuts in the future, do you see that signal as being strong enough to renewables that the different tax credits and renewable portfolio standards that are out there can sort of be relaxed over time and let it compete more? I mean, you shouldn't be getting negative prices if you don't have the subsidies associated with renewables.
Look, I mean, the renewables is probably one of the most successful public-private partnerships that we have seen. Yeah, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would the price of solar and wind be at par with natural gas combined cycle and with natural gas at $3 per MMBTU, I would have said no. Well, the reality is they are price competitive today without subsidies, right? Without incentives. And I know that we have extended the PTCs and that's going to accelerate renewables, but the reality is the industry now, what we wanted to achieve, which was innovation, is here. I mean, they are cost competitive. We need to figure it out now, a way to, now that it's going to scale up, to integrate them into the system without disrupting completely the system. There will be generation that needs to leave the market, and that's okay. But we should always try to have a careful balance. And I say that the three key factors in the electric industry is affordability, reliability, and environmental responsibility. And not only as an industry, but as a company, we are always trying to balance those three. Over the past 10 years, I think the environmental responsibility, for very good reasons, has taken center stage. I mean, the decarbonization of the grid and the decarbonization of the economy is in everybody's mind, right? I mean, climate change, we have to do it. But we need to make sure that we don't do it at the expense of affordability and reliability. I mean, we cannot build an electric system that is only for the haves and not for the have-nots. We have that responsibility as well. And reliability is the one thing that the industry is very zealous about. We're very proud of what we have been able to achieve, 99.9% reliability. I mean, I don't think anybody in this room, when you flip the switch, you don't expect not to have power. Yeah, so it's almost a given. So
our 20th century grid, can it handle this 21st century production mix?
No, I mean, we're moving towards a different type of grid, one that is less centralized. So there will be more decentralization of resources, and you're already seeing in rooftop solar. We need to make sure that the policies are the right ones to continue incentivizing rooftop solar. Batteries will be also a game changer, but batteries are not economic today. I think we need what I describe as a bridge fuel that is going to get us from here to there, and that bridge fuel is natural gas. So, unfortunately, the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine always. And when they don't, you need to make sure that you have very flexible capacity that is, picking up the slack. Ideally, you would like batteries to do that, but batteries are not, they're just not cost effective today. And that's the affordability part. They will, if we strike a partnership like we did with renewables on batteries, in 10, 15 years, we may get there. But in the meantime, we need to make sure that, we just don't put the reliability of the system at risk.
Mm-hmm. So I think, okay. Oh, we have some questions. So remember, we asked folks to send them in just so we could manage this time a little bit more efficiently. It looks like we have 5 minutes until we're completely done, or, okay. So 3 questions, 5 minutes.
I'll try to be brief.
Okay. So the question is, most of the growth at NRG in the past seems to have come from, mergers and acquisition, M&A, thank you. What is the future for NRG, and how many greenfield opportunities do you expect to emerge from internal innovation?
So when we reintegrated Greenco, one of the big concerns that I had was, we had grown through acquisitions, even our renewable business. We strengthened our origination and development pipeline. So now we have an end-to-end renewable platform inside the company that is not only acquiring, but also developing greenfield sites. So I expect that to grow over time. On the innovation side, there is, like I tell my team, there is no excuse for us not to be the low-cost provider of battery storage, because we have already the sites, we already have the interconnections. We just need to unplug one and plug the other one. So battery storage is something that we're taking very seriously, and we're making a lot of inroads. I mean, we're starting a project in California, and I think you're going to hear from us more on battery storage. Innovation on the retail space, particularly on the C&I, like I said, there's no silver bullet, but it will come either from batteries, from solar, rooftop solar, from demand response or controllable demand, creating that ecosystem and integrating that into an easy way for the customer to interact. And I guess the example that I give them is, we should have this very simple app that everything is connected, and the customer can actually see their backup generator, their solar panels, and they can turn off their thermostats, which they can today. But but they haven't been integrated completely. So I think the customer is craving for that. Perhaps they are craving for that. But the same happens on the business to business side. Businesses want to have more control on how to generate their energy and how to consume their energy. So that's where I think we should see a lot of innovation.
So you referred to natural gas as a bridge fuel, but in order to get the natural gas to the generating facilities and to use it more extensively as a bridge fuel, it's going to require infrastructure that lasts for several decades. And we're actually on this campus, we're having this sort of internal discussion about a combined heat and power plant, and because those, you could talk about it as a bridge fuel, but then it is sort of a long-term investment. And so how do you kind of reconcile that view? Like, do you buy the notion that, let's say most people think a bridge is 10 years, but the infrastructure is being 40-year infrastructure. I mean, is it something that can we reconcile those two time horizons?
Again, I don't think we should think of that linearly. I mean, when I say a bridge fuel, it doesn't have to work for everybody. But 70% of the time, if you look at California, the renewable penetration is incredible. And they're retiring their nuclear plants in a year and a half or 2 years. So what they need is a bridge to make sure that before they have mass batteries across the state, that these generators pick up the slack, and that's natural gas. In some places in the Northeast, perhaps, a combination of coal and gas will be that bridge fuel. I think more and more you're going to see businesses take control of their own energy consumption, and I mean we're seeing the likes of Googles and Amazons and Apples, saying, I want 100% renewable. I am going to partner with an energy company, and I want to just make sure that there is a new plant where I serve all my needs. So I think you can reconcile the two in the sense that it's not going to come linearly. Coal, natural gas, battery storage, and in the middle a bunch of renewables. I think you're going to have combined heat and power. You're going to have fuel cell energy in some cases. You're going to have demand response or controllable demand. In some cases, perhaps nuclear and coal will stay a little longer, but they're going to run a lot less than they have in the past. So I would say that just in general, that reliability fuel would be gas, but it's not like it's going to work everywhere all the time.
So I've got to close with this, which is, what advice do you have for students interested in getting into the field today? What kinds of skill sets are you looking for in energy and your colleagues in the energy sector? I mean,
look, let me see if I can describe what is happening in the energy industry in a way that is appealing to all of you. I think the energy industry is going through what the PC industry went 30 years ago and what the telecom industry went 15 years ago. I mean, we're at this point of no return that we're going to see an incredible amount of innovation and disruption to our business. We're already seeing it. I see it from the inside, so I will tell you that there is no other place that I would like to spend my next 10 years, and perhaps more if the investors on the board would like. But it's just incredibly exciting what's happening in the industry, and the skills. I mean, it depends what you want. I mean, I started in the commercial side of the business, but this industry, I think, just provides so much opportunity in so many different fields. I mean, if you want to be in the development, in the construction side, finance is a big part of our business, strategy. Let me just close with something that I read not long ago, and I think it's Michael Porter. He was talking about the next iteration of sustainability, and he goes through the 3 phases of sustainability, and I'm not going to go into the first 2 because I know that I'm already getting the red card here. But the last one, he says, the companies that are going to be sustainable are companies that actually meet the need of society. And I cannot think of any other industry that meets the need of society as the power industry does today. I mean, can you imagine modern society without electricity? It's the lifeblood. So the good thing is that we didn't have to choose that. It's already, we already have a purposeful industry and a purposeful goal. We just need to harness it now. So, if you're passionate about it, that's just about everything that you need, because everything else will follow. I've been fortunate to be in this industry now for over 20 years, a little over 20 years, and I've seen 3 cycles in the industry, 3 boom and bust cycles. I see the excess of the late 90s and that culminated with Enron. I saw the commodity rally of the 2004, 2010, and now I'm seeing the next iteration. I mean, I don't think there are many industries that have seen the life cycles as short as we have seen it in the electricity industry, and I think we're just in the beginning. I think we're just going to accelerate that in the next 10 to 20 years. So, Let me know and give me a call if you wanna if you want to be part of it.
Well, clearly it's not your father's electric power sector. You know, things have changed a lot, and thanks so much for sharing your insights about your experiences with that change, but not only reacting to it, but creating that change. So please join me in thanking Mauricio for a very stimulating conversation.